Trust. If you've moved successfully from fear to curiosity, you will now land up in trust. In other words, they've had an interesting conversation with you. They're not afraid of you, and they actually trust that it might be worth their while to explore a deeper dive. As such, they might ask something about, well, what do you do? Or how are you different? Or perhaps they might even hint at a future time that they might be available to speak. Another way that they might display trust is that they've actually given you a soft objection. For instance, they might have said, well, we actually do something about that internally right now. Or we've used a competitor in the past for something like this and it didn't quite work. And therefore, we need to do four key things. Number one, rebuff. That is to say, to take their objection and to play it back at them. Number two, to provide some proof. Give them the confidence to proceed to the next step. Number three, to make it personal. In other words, to make it very, very clear that this has some sort of benefit directly for them and their company. And number four, to push. Push for a meeting. Many people who would actually be interested in a meeting do not come because they're not directly asked to go to a meeting or to set up a meeting to have that conversation. An example of this in action might be the following. I understand that you currently send free users emails. How do you feel about their conversion rates? And then you might say something like, at Bytable, for example, we have increased total sales by $400,000 in 3 months. And I'm confident that we can do the same for Powtoon as you're structured similarly to them. Can we set up a meeting to go over it? So a lot of the time when you are speaking with a prospect, even if you've had that initial conversation where you've broken through that fear barrier, you've elicited some curiosity, you still have to prove that trust by really giving them an answer that's logical based on what the response is that they gave you, that provides some sort of social proof that gives them the confidence that they're not the first people trying this out, personal elements that show that you actually genuinely care about helping them, and finally a push, which is really a request for a time on their calendars. When you're doing this, though, make sure that you're actually listening to the response from a person before you're assuming one. There is nothing worse for a prospect than getting a cookie cutter response that completely ignored everything that they just said to you. Here's an example. I received a message from somebody putting together pitch decks and investor decks for all sorts of different companies. They don't know that we are completely customer funded and we are not a company that would benefit from something like that. But she just assumed that I would be interested and therefore misframed me, which means that I'm not going to reply.